indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Bucksbaum, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Kathy, let's call the roll.
Mayor Shute.
Here.
Bishop.
Here.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Mendo.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Detman.
Here. The fifth item on your agenda for this evening is the announced business from the audience procedure. If you have an item you would like to bring before and discuss it with City Council this evening and is not on the agenda, please come up and see Kathy Haley, our city clerk. She'll give you a little paper to fill out, and we'll squeeze you in right near the, about 3/4 of the way through. You can discuss whatever you'd like with us. Mayor's report.
Just a few things. If y'all were in town last month and noticed there was a lot of people here, we had one heck of a race. So just a great community event. Talked to tons of people that really just love coming to Sebring, not just from a historic nature, but the race, but also they're really fond of our area, from the city to the county. Everybody kind of worked together. It was really cool talking to people from all over the world. And if you don't know it, we're probably more well known in Europe than we are in the United States. It's just amazing the people that know the Sebring race. It's been around for 70 years. And the racetrack is, they've done a good job. They combined 2 big races this year as they did 3 years ago. And it's just it's a cool event for Sebring, and it's a historic event, and really appreciate everybody in the community and the city and the county that makes it nice for the people that come to visit us. It's just, they really kind of fall in love with Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But second Soda Festival was this weekend. Despite some weather woes that they had, they pulled off a pretty good event. Spent Saturday down there for a good time. Had a lot of people in town. Talked to a lot of people from out of town that made day trips to come over here. So it's a good event for Sebring. They did a showcase event over 3 days this year, which I think was a task in itself. The last thing I have, if you haven't got the Heartland magazine yet, you need to pick one up. It's the February and March issue, maybe just a little bit late, but the April, May is not out yet. But it features our fire department. And the
Very
fire
nice.
department was in the first Heartland magazine 10 years ago. So Heartland, thanks to, what's her name here?
Cindy.
Cindy Sebring.
Cindy Sebring. She's done a wonderful job with this, with her crew. Just a real professional magazine, been around for 10 years, and it's going strong. But it's a neat article. You'll see, I think, the younger version of Chief Border. I think they kind of missed a name on that one, but really appreciate it. They make our city proud. So thank you, Chief Border, for what you do and with the county. So pick up one of these, cherish it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Council members' concerns, comments, liaison reports. We'll start to my left with Mrs. Mendel. Mr. Stewart.
No report.
Mr. Carlisle.
Just want to welcome Terry to the council, and I'll relinquish being the oldest person up here.
Well, that is a little harsh. However, the only one that I feel older than is Roland.
Wow.
Good, that was good.
I like that.
Start. I said that in good humor.
I know you did, darling. I'm fine with it. I love being older.
Okay.
Mr. Bishop.
The only thing I have to say is, we had a lot of hail last night. I'm in the insurance industry, obviously, so there's a lot of out-of-town roofers in the county knocking on doors. Just be wary of who you're doing business with. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, folks. Appreciate that. Our next item is our consent agenda. Some of you probably have the consent agenda that is A through G. We have added another item. It's A through H. So when I ask for someone to make a motion to accept the consent agenda, it would be through A through H with the addition of Andrew's Run as H.
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda, including H.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to on any item that's on the consent agenda, items A through H? Hearing none. Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Mendel,
Here. Yes.
yes. Stewart,
Yes.
Detman,
Yes. Thank you, Kathy. Item 10A, we have no old business, by the way, so we're going right to item 10A, which is the appointment of Sebring Airport Authority. Oh, there's something on here. Kathy, what I'll ask you to do is to, let me see if I can get to it right here. It's on page 2. To read the names in alphabetical order of each of the 3 vacancies. A council member may vote yes or pass on each of those vacancies. Okay, you can only vote once on each of the 3 vacancies. Everybody understand the rules? Kathy?
okay. We'll start with Michael
Ewing.
Ewing, okay, I'm sorry. Bishop,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Detman,
Pass.
Mendel,
Pass.
Stewart,
Pass.
Gary Germain. Bishop,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Detman,
Yes.
Mendel,
Pass.
Stewart,
Pass.
Craig Johnson. Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes. Forgot Detman though, didn't you?
You already voted.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So for the first vacancy,
Okay,
Craig
well, I'll do the
Johnson,
second one.
we'll get that nominee and be removed from the second list. Okay, second vacancy, Michael,
Ewing.
why am I having a problem with that name? Ewing, I apologize. Michael Ewing. Bishop,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Detman.
Pass.
I'm sorry?
Pass.
Pass. Mendel,
Pass.
Stewart,
A pass.
Gary Germain. Bishop,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Detman,
Pass.
Mendel,
Pass.
Stewart,
Pass.
Mr. Johnson is removed. Pete McDevitt. Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
The second vacancy goes to Mr. Pete McDevitt. He'll be removed from the next list. Nomination vacancy number 3, Michael Ewing. Bishop,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Detman,
Pass.
Mendel,
Pass.
Stewart,
Pass.
Gary Germain. Bishop,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Detman,
Pass.
Mendel,
Pass.
Stewart,
Pass.
John Talent. Bishop,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Detman,
Pass.
Mendel,
Pass.
Stewart,
Pass.
Sydney Valentine. Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Sydney Valentine gets a third vacancy.
Sid Valentine and Pete McDevitt are here.
They're here, aren't they?
Yep. Congratulations.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your service. New business, item number B, CRA Development Master Plan Update. I would ask the audience to try to stay on point here and understand what we're doing, because at the last meeting, we had a little bit of, I don't want to call it a shotgun effect that went off, because we started talking about particulars on the waterfront project and things like that. That is not what this document is for. This document has to be, by state mandate, presented to them as a plan, an overall plan. Yes, the CRA projects are included in this plan. So if you feel like you need to come up, I will limit you to 3 minutes. Everyone will have the exact same opportunity. And with that, I think we'll turn it over to Mr. John Jones.
While he's making his way up, let me read the title of ordinance number 1497. It's entitled An Ordinance of the City of Sebring Adopting the Community Redevelopment Plan Update for the Sebring Community Redevelopment Area pursuant to the Community Redevelopment Act of 1969, Chapter 163, Part 3, Florida statutes, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, sir. Just to be completely transparent, I spoke with Mr. Johns 8 minutes before this meeting started in the back of the room, because I had a question myself about how the numbers in the budgets matched up. So naturally, I started with the current year budget. It was, what I believe was the
21-22, sir.
21-22
Yes, sir.
budget, and the final figures did not match up. They're about
Correct.
$1 million apart, so I thought I might want to ask that question.
Correct.
There are also numerous line items that did not match up as well. So I gave him a heads up in order to be ready to resolve that in front of this governing body as well as you folks out here. So, Mr. Johns, any way you want to start is fine with me.
Very good. Thank you, Councilman
Yes.
Detman. Mayor Shoup, ladies and gentlemen. The council, my name's John Jones, 1615 Edgewater Drive, Orlando, Florida, representing SNME. With regards to the councilman's question, the original budget that is contained in this draft document is the working budget from 21-22 and does not reflect the amended budget that was approved last month, the 21-22 amended budget. So we will revise the 21-22 entries in this document to reflect those numbers.
So is the budget that is on the CRA's website correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yes, sir. The draft budget that is reflected in this document does not reflect those current numbers.
Okay, so I guess I have a question for our counselor. Do we need to bring that back again with those numbers adjusted, or are we okay with that to get that resolved?
I think you can pass it with the working budget, and the reason is they could make budget amendments, from time to time, and we might be
Regardless.
chasing those each successive.
We could end up doing that for months and weeks and years on end, actually, couldn't we? Okay, all right, I understand that. All right, Mr. Johns, go right ahead.
I just wanted to point out the other changes that were made in the document were some of the typographical items that were identified, and also some of the budget items that were identified at the last meeting, and also the inclusion of the potential total project cost for the waterfront development within the CRA plan. And the reason why we have to include all potential projects in CRA plans is that if a project is not placed in a CRA plan, the CRA cannot consider implementing that project or spending tax increment funds on it. So it is a standard practice when you're creating CRA plans to cast a very wide net and list a range of potential programs and projects for the CRA to select from, kind of like a menu, and place in their annual work plan. So a lot of the projects that are identified in here, the CRA may or may not act on, but unless they are identified in here, they wouldn't have the option to act on them. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Because it's,
Yep.
Thank you.
yes, sir. Last item, I'd like to thank Scott, David, Christie, and the CRA board for all of their efforts in putting this plan together. There was a lot of public input during this, extensive community engagement, input by the local planning agency, input by the CRA board as well. So I want to thank them for their input.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir.
For the folks who weren't here at the last city council meeting, we went through this entire plan. We did not have the, we won't have the opportunity to do that again tonight unless you have a specific question about this plan. And then what I would ask you to do is to either speak with Mr. Jones, you're going to be here for a little while.
Yes, sir.
Or call the CRA office and speak with either Mrs. Vasquez or Mr. Lydell, make an appointment to see him, because they can explain those things in great detail to you. Once again, this document is required by the state of Florida, and like a lot of, call them what you want, unfunded mandates or anything else, it has to be done. It doesn't mean that all of us are going to understand every single bit of it, but it's something that's a necessary evil in order for them to continue on with their projects throughout the next, how many years?
Next
This is
25
a
years
20-year
or so.
plan
Yes,
right
sir.
here. See, that's why it makes it kind of difficult. So it's fuzzy, to say to say the least.
Mr. Jones,
Yes,
this
sir.
is actually a living document, right?
Yes, sir.
So it can
Correct.
change at any time.
Yes, sir. The CRA board will bring you annual work plans for your approval every year.
Right.
You approve their annual work plan, you also approve their budget. So you will get a chance to revisit this plan every year and pick the projects that you approve and that you fund through the tax increment fund every year when they develop their annual work plan.
It's not actually a budget is what I'm getting at. It's a living document.
Yes, sir.
So it-
Right.
these numbers can change throughout.
Yes, sir. It's a budget worksheet
Yep.
for you
Right.
to
Thank you.
work from.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We
Yes, sir.
appreciate it.
Just gotta,
Mayor Shute?
Yes, sir.
clarify something also that, you know, we, the council asked to put the waterfront plan in, which you put in there on a 3-year basis, which
Yes, sir.
is again the plan. Pardon?
Mike, can't hear you.
That's on purpose, so. No, this is at the last council meeting, the item that they asked to input in here was the waterfront plan.
Yes, sir.
And I think there's some discrepancies in the dollars in that, but it looks like that you taken some engineering and put it in a previous year and had moved some funds around. It's not a direct, what was okayed, the budget was okayed by the city council a couple meetings ago. So
Correct.
this would not match up to the 6.3 or 6.8, whatever that was at that time.
The
So-
cost that is reflected here is the overall project cost estimate. That includes design costs and permitting costs.
Correct.
It is divided out over a 3-year period for implementation.
Okay.
Which is what we ask you to do.
That's
So-
exactly what we asked you to do, and we
Yes, sir.
appreciate you getting that done for us. Okay, anyone have any comments or questions?
Yes, sir, I do.
Mr. Mendel,
Yes.
you've been before us before on,
Yes, sir. And Mr. Detman, I think there's some important things missing in this plan. Just like last time, they didn't have the waterfront project in there,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't have been in there if I didn't bring it up. So I'd like to bring up some things that's wrong with this plan.
okay, go right ahead, sir.
First item, I gave you a handout, and I'm going to hit on the items that are in bold. Our actual revenue from 2017 to 2021 was $5.1 million, $20,000 in grants, and there's a $1 million loan there. The master plan has TIF funds of $5 million, which is reasonable. It's 2.5% per year. That's a reasonable amount. The grants is $192,000, compared with the previous 5 years of $20,000. Reasonable amount. There is $0 for future loans. You need to hold that point. $0 for future loans. The capital outlay projects is $4.6 million, and I'm showing page references where I got the information, so I'm not making it up. The proposed capital projects is $17.5 million. And then there's 13 other projects worth $2.6 million. So the total capital projects that's in the plan is $24.7 million. The master plan revenue, however, is only $5.2 million. So what's not shown in here is how do you get the additional funds, because the plan is showing negative numbers for years 2023 through 2025 for 3 years. So you're going to issue a plan with negative $24 million numbers in there. And the reason is, just like last time, they didn't want to show the waterfront project in there. They don't want to show the value of loans that you're going to have to take to match this plan. And the loan value, if you take it just a reasonable estimate, there's a $18.9 million shortfall in total. If you take a 15-year loan at 4.5% interest, that'll be another $5.6 million of interest. So this project won't be $17.5 million, it'll be $23 million. I think there's significant problems. Another important part is they show the cash flow. On 2022, they show it at $5.8 million. On all the other projects, they show design and construction. And they used exactly 8% of construction costs for design costs. They didn't break out this waterfront project that way. If you break out the waterfront project, 8% of the $17.5 million is $1.4 million. So what you're going to spend in 2022 is $1.4 million, not $5.8 million. So I think this plan needs some significant work.
Thank you, Tom. You have 20 seconds left. Appreciate it, sir. I'd like to see Tom partner up with the CRA folks and give them a hand and kind of complement each other. This is a team project to begin with.
Devin, I went to them
Yes.
previously,
Yeah.
and the response I got was, thank you, Mr. Mendel, but no thank you.
Now your time is up, sir. Thank you. Okay.
I think this, and we kind of covered this last time, but there's a misconception of actually what a CRA plan is, and I think and Tom, I appreciate the hard work you put into this and identifying that, but it's, the CRA plan is it's a 21-year plan to 2043. But if you read the definition, if you go into the state and read the definition, it says that the CRA is responsible for developing and implementing the community redevelopment plan that addresses the unique needs of targeted area. The plan includes overall goals for redevelopment in the area, as well as identifying the types of properties planned in the area. And I think Mr. Jones had explained that you have to put these things in the plan. The revenue side is not totally in here. The revenue side and the cost side come on an annual basis to the city council. So at that time is when the city council looks at the project itself. In talking with the CRA, their next step is to get the engineering done so they can define what actually has to be done. These are rough numbers, these are guesstimates by a consultant. So we've got to go to the next step to get the design and that. And if it costs 150, 250, what it costs, that's what it's going to cost. And we find out that this is a $17 million project to get it done, well, that's a decision then that the city council needs to make at that point in time. But the plan itself is a plan, and it identifies projects to do in the future. It's not identifying 100%, this is what the cost is, because we don't have the cost. You don't have the cost till 2043. There's no way you can get that cost, but if that project's not in here, without amending the plan, we can't address that project. Well, this project's in here, they put the dollar amount of the cost in here. Now, there's revenues, there's dollar amounts, there's coming, the CRA's been working with different groups as far as getting grants. They're gonna look at the loan prospect. If you look at 17 million, you're exactly right, Tom, if you look at 17 million, if you borrow it all today, over 20 years, you're about $1.5 million in debt service. Well, that eats up everything, plus we don't have to pay Christie anymore, we don't have to pay anybody. So that is the next step after we define what exactly is the cost it's gonna be. So I think that we're getting Tom's you're jumping ahead a little bit to get to the nuts and bolts of it. Until we know what the cost of this plan is, the cost of the waterfront is, it's hard to include. It's like the Ridgewood Drive project, the Martin Luther King project.
Right.
All of these projects are guesstimates here. And they're gonna change over time, but this is what this is. This is a 20-year plan, and it's a plan, it's not the budget. On an annual basis, David and Christie are gonna have to come back. The next step to get the waterfront plan is to bring that back to us and say, this is how it's going to be funded, this is what's going to be done, this is the cost of it. It's going to be more concise, but we're getting the cart in front of the cart in front of the horse as far as trying to make this a specific dollar for dollar match, which you'll never do over 20 years. So this is what a CRA plan is. It's not a strict budget
Right.
or cost estimate. That's the next step. That comes back to City Council for approval. The project has been approved by the City Council,
Right.
but it hasn't been approved for the funding or for the cost yet. So there's another step. It's got to come back again to the City Council for that approval.
And not to make this sound too awfully simple, if you bought a piece of plywood 4 years ago, it was about 10 or 12 bucks. Now it's $60. So we can all kind of say, geez, what's it gonna be in 3 years? What's it gonna be next year? How about even next month sometimes, you think about it. Any other questions for Mr. Jones, council members?
I'm good.
Ms. Mendel?
Well, in bringing up about your example of the plywood, I mean, that's even a worst-case scenario.
It could be.
And we'll have a chance to vote on that
Yep,
every
it
year.
could very well be.
So if they bring something to us that's completely insane and it's not feasible or reasonable.
And we don't do it.
We're gonna say no. So this is a broad brush,
Yep.
is what it is. And then it relies on our approval of how they're gonna get the money. And if it's not logical and makes sense and what is best for the city of Sebring, the city council won't do it.
Well, not only that, but if we don't submit the plan, then they can't do anything.
There you go.
State says,
And, yeah,
can't
so
do
we
it.
have to approve the plan to allow the TIF funds to be allocated to the CRA.
I think there's a little bit of confusion, I don't mean to interrupt anybody, but I think there's a confusion also what's happening at the waterfront. Because I've had some people approach me and say, how can you tear down these buildings without even having a plan yet approved? And knowing what it's gonna cost, and I said, listen, that's all part of the approval process. There's nothing gonna happen
Right.
until the city council says, okay, we understand where the funding's coming from, we understand the cost now, and we approved the budget for that waterfront plan.
Right.
So it's not, I mean, there's a big step before anything is touched on that waterfront.
Correct. Members of the council, if I may. Tom raises a very good point, and the point is exactly what the purpose of the budget worksheet is for. And to quote from the document, it's to provide proposed project costs, proposed funding levels, potential phasing options, to demonstrate the potential budget impacts with the implementation of the projects and programming, and to identify the need for additional funding sources if multiple projects are implemented simultaneously at current funding levels. So this budget worksheet is designed to show you those shortfalls and show you where those errors occur, where you don't have enough money to do everything you want and everything that's listed in here. So that's where the tough decisions happen. When the rubber hits the road, you have to make those decisions. Which projects do you prioritize with your available funding? With regards to the comment about the design costs for the waterfront, those items were included in the cost estimates that were provided by your consultant.
Right.
Those are 8 to 10% of the overall construction value, and there was also a 20% contingency amount in that estimate as well. So within that $17 million, which is the total estimated cost of the waterfront project, your design and your contingency fees are included in that cost estimate.
Great. Thank you.
I made a phone call to Christie and talked to her about this, and they actually are expecting the numbers to come in lower than is projected.
Okay.
You know, so that this, what everybody has to understand, you know, these are numbers that are being given to us, but we'll never know a good number until we have a contractor bid the job. Then we know the real number.
Sure. Mr. Bishop, anything?
No, we can
Anyone
do
from
the
the
same.
audience want to speak on this matter? Okay, please state your name for us for the record.
Dan Smith.
I'm sorry.
Dan Smith.
Dan Smith, go right ahead.
I spoke to an attorney who represents nonprofits in Florida. His firm does. And I told him about the project, and he said that the Department of Agriculture and the FWC, Fish and Wildlife Commission, are capable of and are sort of authorized to protect any trees on public property that are over 20 years old, and that they may not be removed if they're over 20 years old in Florida. That's a Florida statute. And I communicated with the Sebring representative of the Department of Agriculture, who's in the Fish and Wildlife Division, and he is looking into it. So, I mean, it kind of sounds like hearsay from me, but it was from the attorney in Bradenton, Florida, I believe. So that may be something to research, because those great big shade trees down there are pretty nice anyway compared to what a palm tree would do, you know, on a hot day for sun. So, yeah, that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, and we have representatives from the CRA in the back there, so if you guys will make note of that with your planner, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
If I can just chime in, the construction's going to have to be done in line with the Florida Building Code and all other applicable regulations that may exist for a project like that.
So it may be included in the statute.
Whatever's required will have to
Mr.
be done.
Smith. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate that. Yes, ma'am?
Excuse me, I have one question.
Sure, please.
So have
Your
you-
name, please, for the
My
record.
name is Bobby Harshman.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and I address all of you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I wanted to know then, so you have not approved to begin any removal of the Jack Stroop building in any way? So that's not going to happen, and then whoops, it's already accomplished. Is that correct? If I understand what you all are saying, you're saying that this is a plan, but yet we're not going to be implementing any of it on the waterfront, so therefore we're not going to tear down the Jack Stroop building, even though it might be part of phase one in this. Am I correct? That was my
That's
question.
the best way to answer.
The approval, there's no approvals to tear down anything. The approval was for the 6.3, I believe, for the first phase.
Yes.
For the budget.
Which
Part of
did
that-
include tearing the building down.
It
Which would
will.
include that, but we have to get all the permitting done, you have to get all the engineering, you have to get the cost estimates. If they're out of whack, there's nothing gonna happen to that center. Then we've gotta look at how do we improve the park itself somehow. But at this point in time, it has not been approved for destruction.
I see. So we aren't going to wake up one morning then, and it's gone, and we don't have a city civic center. We will find one somewhere because this one has been removed, and whoops, the economy is not good, and the building costs have gone way up, and so we're kind of in a pickle, and this usable building has been removed.
Well, we're not there
That-
yet.
Yeah, we're not
not
quite
there.
there yet, Ms. Harshman, and I think if you were you at the last meeting when we discussed this
No,
topic?
sir.
We
I've
also
only
said
heard
that
about
the women's club over at Veterans
Yes,
Beach,
yes.
as a stopgap or a temporary measure, that if it did get down to that point, we would have that ready, and the city would use that as a temporary home for our civic center until we were to make
Yes.
much more grandiose plans.
Okay, well, I would like to appeal to you to consider not tearing it down until we have something to replace it, and I appreciate your help.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Bobby Lee again. I would like some clarification on the master plan, if we could get it. When Mr. Councilman Carlisle brought up the numbers 15 minutes ago, first brought it up, the implication that I got out of that sitting here in the audience was only the numbers can be changed, not the plan concepts. Now, I'm a little confused, and maybe we can get clarification from Mr. Jones, but every plan I've ever known about in my life has to be modified somewhere along the way, not just the numbers, but that's the way it came across. So if we can get that clarified, it'd just be interesting to know.
I think, you wanna answer that, or?
Well, go ahead, because he already answered it pretty much.
I mean, basically what it is, Mr. Lee, is that the plan has to, it's a 20-year plan that you have to identify a bunch of projects to do in that plan. If it's not in the plan now, you cannot add it to the plan. You can modify the plan down the road to change the numbers, but it's pretty much everything, you try to put everything into it. To modify the plan, it goes through a bunch of hoops at that time. So what Mr. Jones has done here is to dump everything into this plan that we could think of that needs to be done in this CRA district. And then we can pull pieces out of that and do those. So, you know, it's a living document to change. So it's not like a standard budget that says I make $1,000 and I spend $1,100. You know,
Right.
it's not at that point. That comes on an annual basis as a checks and balances, so.
And you don't have to do it. That's what the living plan is. Did you take the pieces out and,
Which wasn't my point. Basically, there are 5 strategies in the plan. What if you really needed 7, because the whole climate in this part of Sebring changes?
I think that's where the flexibility of the entire document comes in.
It could be amended further at that point.
Sure.
My question, right now, you're telling me it can't be, but you're saying it can be, so I just was curious. That makes more sense. I'm not worried about the numbers, I'm worried about the plan itself,
No.
the concepts of
Right.
the plan.
No, what I was
Yeah.
saying, it's a living document. It can change, any of it can change at any time. Numbers or plans.
I understand the term, but the way it was coming out here, it was just down to dollars, you change the dollars, but you couldn't change the 5 strategies.
No,
You should be able to change the 5 strategies.
Right.
can.
You shouldn't develop the plan like that, it doesn't change the latitude.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Appreciate that. Anyone else like to speak on the subject? Mr. Dean.
I'm James Dean of Sebring. I am pleased that on April 2nd, Highlands News Sun published an editorial that City Council needs to rethink the losses that will result from the $6 million allocation towards Sebring waterfront project. The newspaper stated what the majority of citizens, excluding Charlie Lawrence, have said for a year. CRA's destruction of the waterfront and civic center is a mistake. This entire mistake of CRA funds should officially be called a mistake on the lake. Winston Churchill said in 1948, "Those that fail to learn from history are destined to repeat it." World events in the last month are uncannily like September 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. Like that time, U.S. is trying to remain neutral, but 1941 could return at any time. To spend $6 million on destruction, including the Civic Center, is truly the mistake on the lake. If you Google Sebring CRA, Community Redevelopment Agency, financial information, the first paragraph of the website tells how CRA is funded by a portion of the increase in city and county taxes since 1983. The second paragraph tells what CRA does with the money. It states CRA commits these funds in an effort to solve the underlying problems of slum and blighted conditions through planning and development, historic preservation, economic development, and affordable housing. In Highlands News Sun, December 26, David Liddell talked about giving the former historic Nansesui property that cost taxpayers $200,000 to demolish to a developer to build a 5-story apartment building. Mr. Liddell stated, "With a CRA, you have to think differently in how you invest. Spending $200,000 and demolish a building sounds like a lot, but they will get in return an $8 to $10 million project. The property taxes on that building will go on to $100,000 a year, so our expense into that is worth it." David Liddell's newspaper statement proves the CRA website is false. CRA makes no effort to solve the underlying problems of slum and blighted conditions, does not plan historic preservation, instead plans to borrow $6 million for historic destruction. He states CRA's goal is to raise property taxes. Either CRA's website or David Liddell are very wrong. Finally, I stated at the last meeting when it was ignored, so I will state it again. CRA chose the wrong consultant for their waterfront development plan. They should have chosen the author of the book Sebring City on the Circle, or the archaeological historical consultant who restored the Sebring Amtrak station and made it ADA compliant. The plans for the mistake on the lake should be put on the shelf. The correct consultants hired by CRA, preferably one or both of those suggested. Both plans should then be put before citizens of Sebring to decide by vote, not decided by Sebring City Commission and the CRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Go ahead. I don't believe there's any action that needs to be taken by the commission, or I'm sorry, by the council this evening. Is that correct?
No.
There's none requested?
No, there is a recommended.
No, you would be adopting that ordinance on second final, should you choose to do so.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we entertain a motion to that effect?
Yep. I move we approve the 2021 Sebring CRA Master Plan and adopt ordinance 1497 on second and final reading.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Comments from the audience? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Okay, didn't hear you, okay. Stewart,
Yes.
Bettman,
Yes. Thank you, Kathy. Our next item on the agenda under new business is item 10C. This is a public hearing, which I will now call to order. It's a public hearing on ordinance number 1483, a city-initiated request to add mini warehousing and car care center car wash uses to section 26-140 of the Sebring Code of Ordinances. Mr. Swain, for the introduction, please.
Just a moment to make sure we don't
Yeah,
get that again.
sure. And thank you for being here, Ms. Riddell.
thank you.
Why don't we do this, Ms. Riddell, why don't you go ahead and open this up since we have a little technical difficulty going on here, and then we'll have Mr. Swain read the ordinance.
Okay, that sounds like a great
And
plan.
introduce yourself, because I didn't do that for you.
All right, I appreciate that. My name is Dana Riddell with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council. I'm a senior planner with them, and we assist with the technical assistance for planning items for the city of Sebring. So tonight, we are going over the second reading of amendments to the C1 district, section 26-140. And we are simply requesting to add less than 15 words to the code, where we've recently had some new development come into the city limits of Sebring. We have new car washes, and we have proposals for mini storage and self-storage, which are permitted in the C1 district already, but it wasn't very explicit. So it made it difficult for developers coming in to really know and understand that these uses are permitted in the C1 district. So we just requested to add, and I'll go ahead and read it. Under section 26-140, where we allow trade establishments, including cleaning and dyeing and hand laundries, shops for the sale and repair of lawnmowers, batteries, radios, bicycles, guns, shoes, trees, typewriters, watches and jewelry and other mechanisms, shops for interior decorators, painters, paper hangers and plumbers, addressing and mailing, advertising and distributing, multigraphing, printing and photography, and laboratories where the items are being sold or serviced are housed primarily within a building. Here is where we add car care centers or car washes, automobile filling and parking stations, which already were in existence, and automobile sales rooms, which were already permitted. So we're just adding like and similar uses. And then under number 12 of section 26-140, we're proposing to add mini storage, which would be self-storage and mini warehousing, not full-blown warehousing, just mini warehousing. In the past, on March 8th, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Board unanimously voted to forward the text amendments with the recommendation of approval. And on April 5th, 2022, the City Council unanimously voted to approve Ordinance 1483 on first reading. And I will turn it back over to you, and the motion options will be available on the screen shortly.
Thank you. Mr. Swain, if you would, please.
Ordinance number 1483 is on your agenda for second and final reading. To accomplish that which Ms. Riddell has just explained, is entitled an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring regarding certain text established in Article 4, Division 2, Section 26-140, C1 Commercial District, to add mini warehousing and car care center uses to the C1 District, providing all ordinances in conflict, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for conflict, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much. And as you all, I'm sure, know, that the purpose of a public hearing is to receive public input. So if you have any input that you would like to have on this particular topic and subject matter, we would appreciate you coming forward. If not, then I can adjourn the public hearing. Councilman's questions, comments, concerns on this particular matter?
None.
None? Okay, looks like we're good here then. This is the second and final reading, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I make a motion we approve ordinance 1483 on second and final reading.
appreciate that motion.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Bishop. Anybody want to comment one last time? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Cornell,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Going to open another public hearing here. This will be item 10D, public hearing ordinance number 1484, city initiated request to amend sections 12-35, 23-31.1, 26-38, 26-35, 26-55, 26-55 again, for some reason, 26-254, and of the Code of Ordinances to address non-conforming mobile home parks and clean up inconsistencies throughout the code as they pertain to mobile home parks. Ms. Riddell?
Thank you. Again, Dana Riddell, Senior Planner with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council for the record. Bob, would you like to go ahead and read the short title?
Go right ahead.
It is ordinance 1484. I believe also on second and final reading this evening is entitled an ordinance amending chapters 12, 23, and 26 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring regarding certain text established in Chapter 12, Article 2, Section 12-35, mobile homes restricted to parks, exception. Chapter 23, Article 2, Division 1, Section 23.31.1, definitions. Chapter 26, Article 2, Division 1, Section 26-38, nonconforming uses. Chapter 26, Article 4, Division 2, Section 26-135, multiple family residential districts, R2, 1, and 2 family district. R3, multiple family district, R3P, multiple family / professional district, R4, multiple family district. Section 26-155, RV Park District, and Chapter 26, Article 5, Division 3, Section 26-254, mobile homes, to address non-conforming mobile home park requirements, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for conflict, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, sir. And once again, the purpose of a public hearing is to receive input from the public. So if you have any comments you would like on this particular topic, this will be also a second and final reading. Please come forward now. If not, I'll close the public hearing at this point. Councilman, comments, concerns?
No, sir.
Anything you'd like to discuss? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve ordinance 1484 on second and final reading.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Carlisle and a second from Mr. Stewart. Any other commentary up here, folks? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Cornell,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. We're going to do this again 2 more times. And what we're about to do, let me go ahead and open up the public hearing, then I'll explain it to you. Okay, this will be a public hearing, items 10E, and we're going to marry 10F together with it for practicality purposes instead of going through the entire thing, but I'll go ahead and read it. 10E is public hearing ordinance number 1495, an applicant initiated amendment to the future land use plan, specifically changing the future land use designation for a portion of the property located at 2838 US alternate 27. Sebring, bearing parcel number S-32-34-29-090-030-0010 and lying in Section 32, Township 34 South, Range 29 East, Highlands County, Florida, from the county medium family residential, or that all are known as RM, to the high-density residential HDR. And the same thing with 10F, let's see, which would be changing the zoning classification. Is that correct, Ms. Riddell?
Correct.
For a portion of that property at 2838 US 27, alternate 27, bearing the same strap number, correct? Yes, and lying in the same township, range, etc., Highlands County, Florida, multiple family dwelling, motel, and hotel district to city PD plan development to allow for 529 multifamily dwelling units with recreational amenities. So, with that, let's go to Mr. Swain.
So there are two ordinances, and just so council's clear, Ms. Riddell will explain it in greater detail, but 10E and 10F both deal with the same property.
That's correct.
Ordinance 1495 is entitled an ordinance of the City of Sebring, Florida, amending the City of Sebring Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map on a portion of property located at 2838 U.S. Alternate 27 Sebring, bearing parcel S233429909000300010 and lying in Section 32, Township 34 South, Range 29 East, Highlands County, Florida, from County Medium Density Residential, RM, to City High Density Residential, HDR, transmitting said amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for notification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. That ordinance and the next are both on your agenda for first reading this evening. Ordinance number 1496 is entitled an ordinance of the City of Sebring, Florida, changing the zoning classification on a portion of property located at 2838 U.S. Alternate 27 Sebring, bearing parcel S233429909000300010 and lying in Section 32, Township 34 South, Range 29 East, Highlands County, Florida, from County R3 multiple family dwelling, including motel and hotel district, to City PD plan development to allow for 529 multifamily dwelling units with recreational amenities, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, just so the public understands this, the council will be voting on these separately, even though we're presenting them together, because it is the same address. Ms. Riddell?
Thank you. Again, Dana Riddell, Senior Planner with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council. If you could flip to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the property in question is known as the Old Kenilworth Golf Course. The current owner is a limited liability corporation, Lake Jackson Holdings, and the agent is Rick Whidden, who is here tonight for any questions. The applicant is proposing to change a portion of the property located at 2838 U.S. Alt 27 for the future land use map amendment from county medium density residential to city medium density residential, and change the zoning from county R3 to city PD. And we know that that happens when we're going from county to city, when something has been annexed, but the zoning hasn't been changed quite yet. So that's why we're going from county to city. And on the next slide, we show our future land use. The existing future land use is county medium density residential, which allows up to 8 dwelling units per acre. And on the next slide, we have a visual of our proposed future land use, which would be city high density residential, which allows up to 20 dwelling units per acre or up to 40 dwelling units per acre with a planned development, which the requester is not requesting up to 40 dwelling units per acre. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment.
Okay.
The existing zoning is County R3. It has a really long name, multiple family dwelling district, including hotel and motel. And then we have a visual on my next slide of the proposed zoning, which is city plan development. I threw these next slides in here. We'll probably end up going back to them. You have them in your packets, and if you need larger visuals, the agent also brought some bigger site plans if you need them today. We also recently got them in black and white. If you want to go ahead and put them up on the screen, Scott, thank you. This is a zoomed in visual of the proposed development. It shows 26 buildings. One of the buildings is a clubhouse with 9 apartments at the top. It's the most northern building. And then we come down to our next site plan on the next slide, and it's showing the portion of the property, but zoomed out, we have the whole property, and then you can see where the actual development is, how it will be accessed with a new road off of the Parkway and Persimmon on the west. And we'll also go into transportation. So going on to my next slide, this is going to be a little bit of a longer presentation. All of this was included in your staff report, so I'm going to maybe skip over some of the more finer details, but basically what happened in 2005, there was consideration for a potential planned development across the entire parcel. And actually, there's other parcels. So right now, when we zoomed out and we saw that large parcel, that was 116 acres. But there's also a couple other smaller parcels around it that make up 142 acres. So there was consideration to potentially create a planned development across all 142 acres. But before a planned development actually occurred, the city and the applicant went ahead and engaged in a development agreement, which most times nowadays will go ahead and approve a planned development, which is like a bigger umbrella of the things we want to allow on the property and certain dimensional requirements. And then it might get more narrowed down in a development agreement. But they did it the other way, which is fine. They did a development agreement first, and they were going to come in with the planned development, but the planned development on this particular portion of the parcel never occurred. They did, at one point, request a planned development on the southeast portion of the parcel, which I will, again, go into a little bit later. But I wanted to specifically point out that some of the items requested as part of this planned development are inconsistent with the existing development agreement, which means the existing development agreement will either have to be revised for this particular portion of land, or a new development agreement will be instated on this particular portion of land. And they'll work on that new development agreement with the city attorney, the applicant, and the owners, all to come to an agreement. So just to quickly go over the items that might be inconsistent with the development agreement, they talked about landscaping in the old development agreement. As far as we could tell, this new PD will meet the requirement for landscaping. They wanted street trees along the roads and along internal access roads. And the site plan that was provided did show landscaping along the roads. And it also limited the density to 1,136 dwelling units across the entire 142 acre parcel. Now remember, it's been whittled away to a 116 acre parcel, and now this portion of the parcel that we're dealing with, just this portion, is 30.34 acres, if I recall. Thank you. Okay, so on that 30.34 acres, they are requesting 529 units. So it does comply with the development agreement, but we're not talking about the parcel on a large scale anymore. We're just talking about that 30.34 acres. And there hasn't been any other development anywhere else on the parcel, so they are in compliance. On the next slide, we talk about the minimum acreage and street frontage requirement. So it requires a minimum of 5 acres for multifamily development, which they'll meet with 30 acres, but it also required a minimum road frontage of 300 feet, which the new plan doesn't meet. They do have 2 access roads, but it's not along the parkway. And I think at one point, what it looks like to me is the portion of the property that was abutting the parkway was sold off to the school board. Or at one point, now it does belong to the school board or to Highlands County. The county, okay, the county. Thank you.
Drainage for the parkway.
Okay. Okay, so that's why it belongs to the county, because now it's used for drainage. So they were probably banking on that being their 300 feet, which they no longer own. So that is inconsistent with the development agreement and can be changed in the development agreement. The multifamily lot shall not exceed 65% of maximum lot coverage. The development complies with that, and it also complies with the height requirement of 45 feet or 3 stories in the development agreement. The development agreement also limited the minimum square footage for any of the homes to 1,250 square feet, with a minimum of 1,000 square feet being on the ground floor. In the new plan, they're proposing some efficiency suites. The smallest living spaces that they're requesting is 720 square feet. So that's inconsistent with the development agreement, and again, can be amended as part of the development agreement. There was also, on the next slide, there was also a point of maybe like inconsistency on the old development agreement. And I'm sure they had a reason for it somewhere, but they went ahead and said that the minimum setbacks had to be 100 feet in one section, and then in another section they said that they had to be 50 feet. So they comply with the 50-foot requirement, but not the 100-foot requirement. And since that's an inconsistency to begin with, that would definitely have to be sorted out in the development agreement. And then on the next slide, they had a slew of different options for signs in the development. Some of them are a given, like, of course, we're going to allow you to put stop signs and traffic control signs and things like that. This applicant has narrowed it down to the signage that they'd like. And in this case, we're only talking about signage on that 30.34 acres. We're not talking about signage on the greater 116 acre parcel, because they might eventually want to see if they can have a PD to put a sign out by the parkway to say, hey, our development's back here, but we're not talking about that. We're only talking about the portion of their property, and they're proposing to allow one single-sided monument sign with a sign face not greater than 32 square foot and a height not greater than 6 feet at each entrance. We talked about how they have 2 entrances on Persimmon and the new road that they'll create. The signs would be able to be backlit or groundlit. The sign setbacks from the property line would be not less than 10 feet and shall meet triangle of visibility requirements. And so they really narrowed down their signage. It doesn't necessarily 100% comply with the development agreement, but when that development agreement is rewritten, they'll be able to hone in on that. So that's it for the inconsistencies and the consistencies for this particular development in the old development agreement. And let's go on to the next slide and talk about consistency with the surrounding area. So when I did the analysis for the surrounding area, we know that that 30-acre portion is surrounded by more county medium density residential and R3 zoning. So I'm looking at the properties around that 116-acre parcel. And in that area on the north, we have plenty of multifamily development in the north and northeast. We have a retirement home. And then on the northwest, we have some single-family developments and some churches. We have more churches and single-family development on the west. And toward the southwest, which is very far from the actual proposed development, are some commercial uses. We have C1, there's a vehicle service yard, which it's labeled as that, but I don't think it's being used as that right now. I go based off what the property appraiser's office says. And then to the south, we have the Francis 1 or 2 mobile home park. And on the southeast is where that planned development was proposed, and it's just being used as timberland right now. So we'll move on to the next slide and we'll talk about what this means in terms of density. So I used the highest possible density when making this comparison because we're going from the existing county medium density residential to city high density residential. When it comes to future land use, we have to do comparisons on what the absolute maximum could be. And if they proposed a plan development that had a 40 dwelling unit per acre density, then on that 30.34 acres, they could do 971 dwelling units. But they're requesting a plan development, which means they're limited further by their zoning. And they're requesting a total of 17.44 dwelling units per acre for a total of 529 dwelling units, which means approval of this zoning and future land use change means that they're able to do an additional 287 dwelling units than would have originally been allowed by the county medium density residential future land use and R3 zoning. So how is this going to affect public facilities and services? On the next slide, please. Thank you. So we know that potable water and sewer is in close proximity, and we have confirmed with the city that there is capacity to service the proposed development. In terms of solid waste, there have been some options thrown around. So any solid waste has to be city approved. But there was some talk of potentially using a trash compactor, and that's why I think on the plans that you received, you'll see where it says dumpster options. They're still working out. So either they're going to have one large dumpster receptacle on the property, the trash will be collected by a service person, and it'll all be taken to that compactor, or they will put dumpster enclosures around the property and people will bring out their own trash. But that has to be worked out in terms of who is actually able to collect that trash. And then we have our transportation and traffic analysis. So the applicant actually went forward and did do a traffic analysis, and the traffic analysis results were good. It basically said that there were no major impacts expected. Connection on the north side of the subject site via a portion of a roadway currently identified as Persimmon Avenue. The roadway is located within a portion of the subject property which is intended to be dedicated as right-of-way. I brought that language over from their traffic study, but Persimmon is on the west side.
It's on the north.
North side.
The map's turned sideways.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. I've been looking at it wrong. Okay. Well, then it is on the north side. I stand corrected. Okay, and then in terms of the other access, connection via an access driveway located at the southern end of the subject site, which will connect with a second driveway with access to the Sebring Parkway / Highlands Avenue south of the railroad crossing on the parkway. This proposed access will traverse a portion of the parent parcel, and the secondary driveway may be dedicated as public right-of-way. So I threw the plan back in there on the next slide so we could look at those roadways again. And those roadways, from conversations with the developer, are expected to turn into actual roadways, not just driveways. And there might be potential for other future connections, but that's not proposed at this time, but just forward thinking. And we'll go back into more traffic and transportation on the next slide. I just wanted us to get that visual back. So the results of the initial traffic impact study are summarized. to basically say the proposed development will generate a total daily traffic volume of 3,466 vehicle trips, of which 248 will occur in the PM peak hour. Roadway segments within a 1 mile impact area currently operate within a satisfactory level of service and will continue to do so with the addition of project trips. Intersections within a 1 mile impact area currently operate within a satisfactory level of service and will continue to do so with project trips added. Traffic impacts associated with the proposed future land use and zoning amendments and future development are anticipated to be minimal, and the county's traffic concurrency requirements will be satisfied. So they have to get concurrency through the county. They haven't officially gotten it yet, but that's not necessary for this stage of their development. They had their application signed by the county stating that they will require a large-scale traffic analysis, and they will likely turn in the traffic analysis that they provided to us. On the next slide, the Highlands County Public School Board acknowledged sufficient capacity for students resulting from 529 multifamily dwelling units. And recreation and open space is proposed. So the applicant is proposing to provide 15.41 acres of open space. We requested 30 because the most similar district to the PD that they're trying to create is the R3 district, which requires 30% open space. And this PD that they're creating is showing 50.79% of open space. And usually, if there was a 30% open space requirement in the R3 district, we would ask that half of that, so 15% of the development, be used toward recreation. And the applicant is proposing 7.28 acres, which is 24% of the development, to be used as recreation. So you might notice on your map that there's a park and there is a walking trail on a certain side of the development. So then we move on to our recommended conditions. So remember, this is our umbrella of conditions to be further refined by the next development agreement. The recommended conditions are that there would be a maximum of 529 dwelling units allowed, that the height shall not exceed 45 feet, and that 45-foot requirement is consistent with the R3 district, the old development agreement, and their proposed plans. The minimum living area shall be 720 square feet per dwelling unit. That's what they're proposing. And a landscape buffer shall be developed consistent with the type D buffer. Because it's surrounded by R3 zoning, multifamily zoning, it requires a 10-foot buffer. They're proposing to provide much wider. But I wanted to make sure we included today's landscaping regulations, because I have seen landscaping regulations change in other jurisdictions, and if I just said type D, that could be different in the future. So we went ahead and put in what the minimum requirements are for today's buffering. Then on the next slide, we go ahead and state that it shall comply with section 26-257. Now, section 26-257 is the portion of the code that directly refers to multifamily development in the city of Sebring. It's the standards for development that any multifamily development must adhere to. And that's also where we will find some landscaping requirements for internal access roads and parking lots and things like of that nature. We added the setbacks that they're proposing. So to say that these would be their minimum setbacks, it coincides with their proposed site plan. And then we also say that signs shall comply with Chapter 11 of the Land Development Regulations, which the signs that they proposed do comply with Chapter 11. The minimum internal drive aisle width shall be a minimum of 24 feet wide, which is what is required by our code. And the property shall be maintained and kept in good condition, free of debris, and in good working order at all times. We added that condition because there was uncertainty at the time, and I don't know if they've narrowed it down anymore, but we talked about that dumpster enclosure. So if someone goes around and has to collect the trash, which they said that there would be potential trash chutes inside the building, we don't want to necessarily micromanage that, but if the property isn't being kept in good condition because of the trash receptacles, that needs to be a condition of the planned unit development. And on the next slide, we talked about that planned unit development that was approved at one time on the southeast portion of that large parcel. Now, since we talked about that development agreement as well, do you all recall how many units were proposed?
243.
Okay, just 243. So, because there was already a planned development approved there, but they're planning on abandoning it because the topography of the land didn't lend to the development that they wanted to do there. They said they're abandoning it, and we said, okay, that's fine, go ahead and abandon it, but let's go ahead and make it a condition of the PD so we aren't unknowingly permitting two large-scale multi-family developments on the same parcel. If they do want to come in and do that, they can request that separately, but since originally this project was proposed to be in that southeast corner and has been moved to that northeast corner, it's a little bit different from the conceptual plans you all had seen back in August or September, October in the fall. So we wanted to make sure it was consistent with what the board had already approved and seen in the past. So they said, yes, that's totally fine. We'll go ahead and rezone that to R1, but we gave them the option of R1AA or R1A as well, which are even less dense. And then we had that the applicant shall coordinate with the city and county on transportation prior to final development plan approval. So like I said, they hadn't officially obtained concurrency yet, which wasn't necessary at this stage of development. We want to make sure that they do with both the city and the county. And if they build that road and make it an actual road, then they'd be dedicating it to the city. So we'll get that approval from them. We talked about solid waste, so that's condition number 12, that when they actually develop, it needs to be acceptable to the city. They need to show that either them or someone that's approved by the city will collect the trash. Stormwater, we know that that's not really required until the time of development, so we're requesting that stormwater be provided. And then number 14, prior to approval of the final development plan and issuance of construction or development permits, the developer and city shall enter into a developer's agreement, a new one, the one that we've been talking about. It will address stormwater, access to and from the site, right-of-way dedication, utilities, refuse collection, emergency access, floodplain mitigation, and open space requirements. On the next slide, just as a visual, yes, okay, Scott already has it. You can see outlined in purple on the southeast is the parcel that they have to rezone in order for this zoning change to be effective. And that would be it for my presentation. I know this was a long one. I went into a lot of different details. If you have any questions, I'm available, and the applicant is also available.
Thank you, Ms. Riddell. Also, the public should know that there will be a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Board on April 12th, if you're so interested, prior to our next council meeting for the second and final reading on April 19th at 5:30 p.m. Any comments from the public? It's a public hearing. Any comments from the public? Yes, sir. Mr. Smith, can you come up to the podium, please?
The study that was done on the traffic and the requesting the high density, which would allow 40 family dwellings per acre, but you were asking for an approval of that many, when in fact they were asking for 8 dwellings per acre. So I'm asking specifically, the study that was done on traffic and the study that was done on open space, was that for 8 families per acre, dwellings per acre, or 40?
So the open space requirement is a ratio based on the amount of land available versus the amount of impervious surface. So they're building 2- and 3-story buildings. It's not necessarily dependent on the number of people. It's dependent on the number of space. And we have to just acknowledge that the future land use allows a maximum density of 40 dwelling units per acre, which isn't what they're requesting. The planned development that they're requesting would allow a maximum density of 17.44 dwelling units per acre.
That's where the 500 is some number.
Right. So when you have 30.34 acres and you multiply that by 17.44 dwelling units per acre, you get 529 dwelling units.
Why would you zone it to leave them the ability or capacity to make it 40?
The only way they could get to 40 is if they had a PD requesting 40, which,
Then that would call for another traffic plan and open space plan that would have to be approved.
and another public hearing,
Right.
and it'd have to go through the whole process. What they're entitled to without a planned development, and maybe I could add this for my next presentation, say they change the zoning and it's not planned development, the maximum density then in the high density residential future land use would be 20 dwelling units per acre. So that's really what they'd be entitled to without an additional request of up to 40. And I think that would help thank you for mentioning that. I'll go ahead and clarify that for my next presentation. And then might I have Rick or Jeff come up and discuss how traffic analysis is handled? It's handled on like a 1 mile radius, or it's not necessary, well, it is the number of people and the number of trips.
Mayor, Council, Jeff Kennedy for the developer. We hired a traffic consultant, I don't remember the name of the company, from up in the Orlando area, who is familiar working in Highlands County. They met with the county engineer and Kenya Anderson, who's the head of the traffic study people for the county, multiple times. Came up with what they call a protocol, a study protocol, which determines the whole study area of the traffic. Agreed on that. 529 multi-family units come out of the Institute of Traffic Engineers trip generation manual, which studies different types of uses of anything you can think of, basically. And it goes back 30 or 40 years. And they keep adding studies to that all the time, which is used to come up with an average generation rate for different types of uses, both on a daily trip rate and PM and AM peak hours. So we fully complied with everything that county engineer wanted for this study, and it was all done through them.
I'm sure they'll be making a lot less trips to the grocery store, that's for sure.
It'd be nice if we got another grocery store, huh?
Yes. So, Ms. Riddell, have we checked all the boxes for both 10E and 10F on our agenda?
We have. We've gone through everything, and then when you're ready, we will close the public hearing and take a motion.
Okay, well, this will be the last call for the public to chime in on any questions, comments, or concerns, please.
I think also that under the current agreement, developer agreement, the maximum for that entire project is 1,136. So they could use, we're talking about 20 an acre on 140 acres. That's what, 2,800 homes. Well, they're limited by this to 1,136, so they're using up 529. They only have, I think,
whatever the
600
difference is.
left,
Yep.
607 left. So that's the maximum that they're gonna have. It's not, we're not gonna have another PD come up and say, we want another 40 per acre, so we end up with having, 3,000 or 4,000 homes in that. That's restricts it. But I think I'm just a little concerned too about the Persimmon access. I don't know if you've been back in there in the development that's happened across from Heartland Christian and coming out. I mean, that's gonna be a pretty heavy, hopefully not heavy travel, but I see the main entrance is still going to the Parkway, the nice
Sure.
one. So I don't know if that's like a back door, Jeff, or.
Jeff Kennedy again. The Persimmon access, originally when we had we were putting the multifamily to the southeast there, we were gonna be relying only on that new road coming off the
Right.
Parkway. We had 2 entrances proposed, but if that Parkway entrance was blocked, we had no secondary
Right.
access at this point. As the property develops further and we get a road that goes all the way from the Parkway to whatever you want to call that, alternate 27.
You take it to Lakeview,
The Persimmon is basically an exit only for residents and for emergency services. No public will be allowed to come through there. The gate will be closed.
Oh, so it's gonna be gated entrance there?
Both are
Both
gated.
sides, okay.
Both are gated?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's exit only from Persimmon?
Correct.
Okay.
You go out, you can't come in.
So
have
that'll
to come back.
You gotta
reduce.
come around, you gotta go around the block then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know, because I thought that was,
Yeah.
if that was a thoroughfare,
Yeah.
I think you'd have with Heartland Christian there and that new
Oh.
development there, and,
Yeah.
I mean, you'd try to turn on Lakeview from,
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
whatever that Snyder Road or whatever that is,
Yeah.
that, by the storage place there. It's like forever.
Billowy,
Mill- yeah.
Miller Road, yeah, don't even think about that.
Well, that's good to know that at least that's gated and
Yep,
it's an
that's
exit
good,
only,
that's good.
so.
Good forward thinking, I like that phrase that Ms. Riddell came up with.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other comments?
If
yes,
I can,
ma'am.
one other
Sure.
difference between the existing development agreement and what they're proposing is the roads, the right-of-ways themselves. The agreement says they would be maintained as private streets that the developer would maintain. They are now proposing that those roads be public and dedicated to the public, so they would be the cities to maintain. From what we were just looking at, that would be the road portion coming in from the Parkway, and then not specific to this request, but in their overall vision, when that road continues down to hit Lakeview or alternate 27, that would be a public. What they're proposing for you all is that it would be a public road.
piece,
right.
Yes, sir.
And the reason for that would be so that they could add on to that access and entrance for further development in the entire parcel.
And interconnectivity.
Interconnectivity, sure.
Interconnectivity is the main thing, and we think it'll be quite useful when
Mhm.
that connection is made for people to bypass the school zones on the Parkway if they want to get to downtown, both AM and PM. And we're not saying city, we're saying city or county maintain, whoever would like to take it. We just think, rather than making it a private road so the public can't use it, Mr. Forkosh, the developer who's here tonight, is willing to build the road and let the public use it. So we think that's
Mhm.
a good thing. And we also haven't discussed it yet, but when we had a meeting with y'all some months ago, Councilman Lawrence asked for a fire station. And we did provide 0.9 acres of the property for a city public
Potential,
safety. So
That's,
that's there if y'all
that's great.
at some point want to use it.
Yep. Any other comments or questions? Last chance for the public. Close the public hearing. And now we're up to our council members. Comments, questions, concerns? Before we entertain a motion on, and we'll do these individually. Like I said, we'll do 10E first, then 10F. Gentlemen, lady?
Well, it sounds good to me. I feel like very necessary. We need the units.
We sure do.
Desperately in need of places to live. So I'm on board.
Amen. I'll make a motion.
Okay, ready to make a motion? Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance 1495 on first reading and as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Further comment? Public? Kathy, call the roll, and that'll be on number 10E only at this point.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman,
Yes. Okay, 10F. Same thing. Comments? Concerns? Okay,
Make a motion that we approve ordinance 1496 on first reading as presented.
Second.
we got a second. We got a, yep, moved by Carlisle and a second by Bishop. Any comments? Comments from the public? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Okay, thank you. We're up to 10G, which is the Sebring Parkway. Mr. Bogus?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That's
Thank
it.
you, Ms. Riddell.
Thank you so
Good
much.
job as always. Thank you guys very much. Good, have a great day. Drive safely.
Or fast.
Item 10G is Sebring Parkway Phase 2 potable water and sanitary sewer change order, budget amendment number 84. Mr. Robert Bogus. All yours.
Nobody stayed around for my presentation, been a little hurt.
I know, huh? We'll move you up next time into the agenda.
Good evening, council. As the agenda item states, we received some additional change orders from Bergeron for the Sebring Parkway Phase 2 project. The total increase to the contract as of this time is $167,235.03. I still feel optimistic that we're still going to come in under budget. We still have a little over $500,000 remaining in the existing purchase order. But until we get to where all the work is completed, Bergeron doesn't really want to talk about credits. Scott and I both have pressed them on it, and they don't seem to be wanting to talk about it just yet. Having said that, by the end of May, they're supposed to be completely finished based on their estimates with all the infrastructure that the city of Sebring is putting in. So at that time, I believe we would be in a situation where we could determine how much we have come in under budget on this project. But until then, we're pretty much stuck with trying to get to that point. There is an attached budget amendment to fully fund these 3 change orders. We're just pulling the money out of the department's contingency account through line item transfer. And there is a spreadsheet that I asked him to produce that kind of gives you the detail of where we are and what's happened up to this time. So, having said all that, if council has any questions, I will certainly attempt to answer.
Thank you, Bob. Council members, any questions on the proposal to make the budget amendment?
So you understand what they're asking for and you think it's legitimate? You've checked it?
Yes, Mark, and also this runs through our engineer too, Polston Engineering signs up on all this stuff too, so.
Oh, real?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone from the public like to ask any questions or make any comments on this budget proposal? I should say budget amendment. Okay, council members, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve change order and budget amendment number 84 as presented.
Second.
Third?
Who seconded? I think you.
Aye.
You did.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Last time, anyone have any comments? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, business from the audience. I think we have 2 folks who would like to come up and see us. I'm sorry? Three. Oh, okay. All right, let's go in alphabetical order here. Let's go with Bobby Ablin. That's a name that I think I know. Reference City Pier and Rotary Park. You look familiar, Miss Ablin. How do I know you?
I'm not sure.
She used to work for me at the police department.
May I address?
Work release or what?
She's on the work release program, yes.
Yeah, I am on the work release. You're right. My husband might agree with you. May I address the board
Please.
with some pictures so
Sure.
you have an idea as to what I'm talking about? So, good evening, Mayor Shoup and council members. My name is Bobby Ablin, for those of you who don't know me. I have lived with my husband and 2 sons in Sebring since 2000. One of the things we absolutely love about Sebring is Lake Jackson. No matter what kind of day I have had, driving by it always gives me peace. During race week, when we have the most tourists in our county, my husband, parents, and I grabbed some coffee and went to the pier. It was a beautiful Wednesday morning at about 10:30. Not sure when the last time you took your family to the pier, but it has been a very long time since I've been there. To say I was disgusted is an understatement. The trash cans were full and the lids were broken for the ones that have lids. There was trash throughout the area on the ground. The bathroom doors should have given me a sign as to what the bathroom was going to look like. Filthy. There's absolutely no way anyone would want to use this public bathroom. When I walked in, there was trash on the counters and floors, socks and a towel on the floor, no toilet paper, and what looked like feces rubbed on the wall. There are no soap dispensers and rusty toilet paper holders on the walls. This all at a time where people have been more concerned about washing their hands with soap due to COVID. We proceeded to walk out to the pier, which we found is in not very good shape. There are at least 3 of the post bases on the pavilion that are broken or missing with rusty bolts sticking out of them. It is evident that the posts haven't been maintained or painted in a while, as there is graffiti all over them. There is a sign posted on the pier that states, "Warning, there is a dangerous drop-off beyond the marked swimming area. Swim only in the marked area." We looked for the marked area and were uncertain where it started and stopped, as there is nothing marked. This could potentially lead to someone drowning if they are unable to swim and the area drops off. We made our way back to the parking lot, but first stopped by the picnic tables. Holy moly, we were seriously appalled at how disgusting they were. There is no way I would allow any of my family members to eat on them. It is my understanding there is hope this area will go through a renovation in the next few years. Having a splash pad for the younger kids and a new player area would be awesome, as I am expecting a grandchild this summer, so I would be more than happy to take my grandchild there. My biggest concern with the renovation is that we have this wonderful area that could be a nice, relaxing place to eat, sit and talk, or just enjoy the peace and serenity of the lake. However, we aren't taking care of it. We're not doing the day-to-day maintenance that needs to be done. If we aren't able to take care of this, how in the world will we keep up with the splash pad that needs to be sanitized frequently? I understand people could pick up after themselves, not vandalize the area, and that there are homeless that use or abuse the area often. If this is an issue, it needs to be addressed and taken care of. Sebring PD may need to patrol the area more frequently. Public Works should be there every single morning picking up trash, cleaning and sanitizing bathrooms, restocking, etc. A coat of paint is pretty cheap. The doors to the bathroom and inside would look so much better if it had a fresh coat, along with the covered area of the pier. Power wash the roofs to the pavilions. Make it a safe place for people. Some of the upkeep will not cost much or take a lot of time. This was the first visit to the pier area for my parents, as they have recently moved to Sebring. How embarrassed I was. We should all take more pride in our community and want it to be the best it can be. I hope by bringing this to your attention, the city will find the time and funds to address the needs while deciding when, how, and if renovations will take place. I would like to add that I've made a few trips since this visit and speaking with Mr. Natelick. The trash cans haven't been overflowing and the bathroom's somewhat cleaner, but the issues still remain.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If council is in concurrence with me, I will turn that over to Mr. Natelick to have it remediated as soon as very possible and to have it maintained on a much more regular basis. We appreciate that. Thank you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Got your orders? Elaine Daff, you're next. Come on down.
Your orders.
Your topic is Persimmon and Kenilworth.
My name's Elaine Daff.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've been concerned with this area of Kenilworth and Persimmon for a while. And then the other day I saw a young family trying to cross over there. And I just would like to know if there's any way that we could assist pedestrians with crossing that area. The thing is that the sidewalks on Kenilworth are not continuous. And I know that there's a crosswalk by Dimitri's and there's a crosswalk down by the high school and the fairgrounds. But I don't know if somebody wants to, walk young children down a fairly busy road that doesn't have continuous sidewalks just to go across a crosswalk. This area, Persimmon and Kenilworth, you've got 3 schools pretty close to that area. You've got the people going in and out of the football games. You've got the fairgrounds. You do have that new housing development down by Heartland Christian. And that's all. I just wanted to know if we could possibly make it a little safer to cross that area right there. They do have a crosswalk crossing Persimmon, but not crossing from Persimmon over Kenilworth.
Sure.
And that's
Yeah.
all.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. I believe that would be something that we would have to partner with the county to see what might be possible. And then when you think about the development that we had just on the first reading, might be something to take a look into as far as having a pedestrian crosswalk with nicely marked and some signs to alert folks to that condition there. Thank you. We appreciate those.
Elaine, is there a crosswalk, a sidewalk on Persimmon itself, going there in front of Heartland Christian and that? I can't remember. I just drove down there and it's like.
Portions of it.
Portions of it. I mean, that's gonna be, a concern with this development too, is if high school kids are there, or even, Fred Wild won't go that way, but they'll go the other way, but,
There's a sidewalk on Kenilworth all the way on the south side.
Right.
right.
But not on the opposite side.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Scott, you got your note on that one now.
Yes, sir.
And a late entry here into the business from the audience, Mr. Tom Mendel again. Come on up, Tom. And this time you got 5 minutes.
Oh, excellent.
How do you like that one?
I love it.
Business from the audience is 5 minutes. I won't even time you because I know you're not going to take up 5 minutes.
No, sir. And gentlemen, and ladies, I do not want to belabor the subject, but I didn't talk. I tried to keep my remarks previously to the master plan. So now I would like to talk about the project, the waterfront project.
Okay.
I think you have a misconception. I'm sorry. The estimate that's currently produced, the original estimate was $14 to $26 million. The current estimate that's in the plan is $17.5 million. That's 15% lower than the average. You have to realize that the estimate is based on the current design, okay? And the estimate is based on their experience with similar projects that they've done based on the current design. If you don't change the current design, the cost of the project's not going to change. The design has to change. And you have to determine what's a reasonable cost for this project. I don't think this is nuclear science. It's very easy for you to make some reasonable judgments about how much you're going to get from grants and how big of a loan do you need and what's the cost of that loan and interest. And the city of Sebring, what you have right now is a project that's been designed similar to what they've done over in other cities, and it's based on the architect's experience. His reputation is at stake. He's not going to put an estimate that he doesn't believe the cost of the project is. And the projects he's representing are his experience, which is cities like Sarasota that has a population 5 times larger than Sebring. So their revenue base is much larger. You need to establish a target budget for this and then design to that target budget. Because what's going to happen, if I understood you right, you're going to have them do the design and you won't know the cost until you get a contractor's bid in. At that point, you're going to see the bid's too high and you're going to have them redesign it. And you're going to multiply through this many times. You're going to waste taxpayers' money. You need to establish what's a reasonable budget for this job, because what's now has happened, you've approved $6.3 million, and that's only for phase 1. Obviously, there's additional phases. The money that they have right now at $17.5 million is a reasonable cost based on the current design. if you don't change design, I promise you, the cost of the job is gonna be set around from 15 to 18 million dollars, nothing less. They're not gonna dramatically change. I don't think you're doing the taxpayers justice by not looking at it at a more reasonable basis.
Thank you, Mr. Mendel. I'm sorry?
Just
So-
have a budget first, then decide.
Okay. Okay. City Attorney's business, a proposed ordinance amending the number of members constituting a quorum for the Historical Preservation Commission. Mr. Swain.
Agenda item 12A is regards ordinance 1498, which is on your agenda for second and final reading. It is entitled an ordinance amending section 11-37 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring, correcting the number of members constituting a quorum of the Sebring Historic Preservation Commission, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date. This makes it a majority and not 4.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Swain. Comments up on the dais?
Needs to happen.
Council members?
Yep.
Any comments from the public on this issue?
What's the minimum number of members they have to have?
It was 5.
They had 5 members, so 3 would constitute. When they had 7, 4 was the right number.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve ordinance 1498 on second and final reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Putnam.
Yes. Item 12B is contract to lease city-owned property located at 759 Lemon Avenue to Highlands County Citizens with Voices Incorporated for a Washington Heights Veteran Memorial Site. Mr. Swain?
The form of the proposed lease is included in your agenda materials. This is a vacant parcel. And as you'll recall, because it lies within the CRA district, the city had to do a disposition process for it, received multiple competing proposals, and selected this as the best proposal for the site. This lease, and let me just hit the highlights for you, a 1-year term, no rent, but the tenant would pay any taxes that were imposed on the property by virtue of the lease. Tenant would pay the utilities, would maintain the premises, and would not use it for anything other than the construction of a memorial site as they set forth in their proposal to council. It requires insurance of the tenant, indemnification, essentially normal things that the city would require of a tenant on other city-owned property. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
So it's a 1-year lease?
I believe that's what
Okay.
was
So,
asked for. Certainly, it can be longer than that.
okay, so the upkeep is my only concern. Just make sure
Right.
it stays nice, which, you know.
Ms. McGowan here tonight?
She
Representative?
She was here,
Ms. Harley.
Come on up, sir. Tell us who you are. Who is that masked man?
Good evening, councils.
Good evening, Mr. Shannon.
Miss Ada McGowan had to step out, but I was with her when she spoke to Mr. Scott about the situation, and she has got the insurance on the land, and her entity group is Citizen with Voices, and myself, my group, I'm the president of the HELP organization, along with my brother, Dr. Shannon. We're both veterans, and we're going to be sort of behind their organization, giving them a push and making sure that this entity, the veterans, and the other concerned citizens will adhere to everything the council said tonight. So with this being said, I appreciate you guys bringing this forth for the land and giving it to Washington Heights area so that we could, have a memorial there. So anybody have any
If I could
questions?
add to my earlier comments, excuse me, were you done, Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
It is a one-year lease. In the text of paragraph 1, it provides for an automatic renewal that either party may terminate with 90 days prior written notice to the other party. So this thing can go on and on into the future without having to deal with it every year.
Right. So if there was an issue, we'd have an option.
You can kill the lease should there be a reason that you feel you need to,
Okay.
or let it go if you don't.
Sounds good to me.
So who would be performing the maintenance on it on a regular basis?
Actually, we have had maybe 2 or 3 meetings, and we're putting in place about 5 to 6 veterans who's going to be responsible for taking care of the maintenance and what have you in that area. As I have experience with my event park, still it's some work to do with some of the citizens over there. Still, it's some work to do with some citizens over there because they still go along and put down debris. But actually, by beautifying that area with my project and by being involved with other entity groups, by having, I had about 13 different organizations come up, churches and different things to use the event park, the Light of Shannon event park, and that's sort of making us gel together. So what I'm taking on, I'm a little tired, what I'm taking on is a little responsibility in pushing Ada and the concerned citizens along with the other concerned citizens in Washington Heights to keep it clean, keep up the maintenance, even if I have to get up and do it myself. Because I have did it, you know, I do it a lot. I get up in the morning, I come up and I take care of the area. But we are gonna have people in place to take care of that.
Does that satisfy you, Mr. Stewart?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me, too.
Well, you take care of your place. It looks very nice.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the other thing I wanted to say, I have spoke to Ms. McGowan, and I want her to be more involved with city councilmen, with the police department, with county commissioners, with their entity group, to sort of understand the responsibility that you guys have and the responsibility of an entity group, not just to have the name, but to understand that it's a real responsibility in bringing the community together to make sure that they take part in something that you guys are taking part to let our community have. So once again, I'll be right behind that along with my brother, Dr. Shannon, and some more entity group. But once again, we really appreciate everything.
Sounds good. I think on behalf of the council, I want to say thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
I have one question. I have one question.
Hang on a second, Kathy has a question.
On the first page, Bob, it says from beginning and ending, what dates would be put in there for the lease as they're approving it tonight?
Would they like?
It's on the first page.
Whatever date they'd like, we could do it on the 5th.
I'm just
April
wondering
5th.
what date it needs to take effect and,
Why don't we put April 5, 22 to April 4, 2023, subject to the extension provision.
Sure.
yes, sir.
Okay, so with that, I think I heard a motion starting to my left.
Yeah, I'd like to approve the proposed lease as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any comments from the public? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Bettman.
Yes. Item number 14A is to, we gotta pay the bills.
Bills, yep.
Payment of the bills.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to pay the bills. Anybody out there not want us to pay the bills? All right, Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Bettman.
Yes. Final, well, let's see, well, final two items. 15A is the election of council president. Each year, council reorganizes through the election of new officers, i.e. president and president pro tem. This agenda item has to do with the nomination and election of the council president. Procedure is, number one, Council President Pro Tem Detman will open the floor for nominations. Any member of council can nominate another member. Nominations do not require a second. After an appropriate nomination period, the floor will be closed for nomination. Each nominee's name will be called in alphabetical order by Clerk Haley. Number 6 is roll will be called. A council member may say yes or pass. The nominee with the majority of votes will be the new council president. So Kathy, it is your turn.
I open the floor for nominations for council
I
president.
nominate Tom Detman.
Do we need to second that?
No, sir. You do have to vote, but
You don't have to second it, but you do have to vote.
Oh.
I'm going to.
All right, wise guys, go ahead.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman, you gotta vote for
Yes,
yourself.
you got to,
You
okay.
got to. Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Thank you. I will be glad to accept that responsibility. And we'll do the exact same thing for Council President Pro Tem. It's the same background. The President Pro Tem will act instead of the President of Council if not available or unable to perform that task. So Kathy, if you will.
I open the floor up for President Pro Tem.
I nominate Mr. Carlisle, whether he likes it or not.
I nominate you back.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. This is for Mr. Carlisle. Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Be no further business here?
Well, I've got a business.
Yes, ma'am?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about one of the people that came up, and not my husband. But is it
Oh, that was
okay-
your
is it-
husband?
Is it appropriate for me to make a comment on something that I had on my mind?
Certainly.
Okay, the young lady that came up and brought the pictures,
Yes.
for years, I have been concerned about those big holes out in the lake, you know, that people periodically fall into, you know, that don't know, and they drop off and drown. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that area was marked off and it was signed. Is it still marked off, Scott?
There was buoys, right?
Buoys are the buoys? The buoys are now gone,
Oh,
correct?
we filled it in.
The hole?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, yeah, so. this is
Well,
why-
I know
this is
there-
why you were gone, if you
Yeah.
will, or you weren't here.
Yeah.
But yeah, we.
Oh, that's
filled in-
wonderful.
We filled in the hole. I think that there probably still is a sign out there that probably shouldn't be removed at this point, but.
Or is the sign,
Probably cautionary.
what does the sign say again? Is Bobby still here?
No.
There's a picture of it.
Okay, whatever the sign says, if it needs to be removed, let's get it removed. Otherwise, then maybe it says to stay within the swim area, the designated swim area. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
reason.
It says that, and that, yeah, you're supposed to swim.
It does it
within
say anything
the-
about a
within the
drop-off?
buoys.
I think she said there was something about.
Yeah, that was a long
There was a
discussion and that went on for many, many.
Oh. Well, I know
No.
Crescent Drive Beach has a drop-off, and there's another one not far from my home that I know from my childhood. And of course, I can swim fine, but I gave it a test, you know, like if I couldn't swim and I walked out, and it's like dropping off a cliff. If you don't know how to swim, you're gonna drown. I just wondered of the holes that are around in our lake. That's just something I've had on my mind.
Right?
Yeah, so I didn't mean to tie you up here with that.
You're not tying anyone up there. Scott, what does the sign say?
Well, it's pretty faded.
It's what?
It's pretty faded. It's a warning sign.
That you have trouble reading.
I'm having trouble.
So let's let's make it appropriate for whatever the current conditions may be, or remove it, one of the two, okay?
Perfect.
Okay, any other comments, any other business before the board? Oh, my goodness. Okay. Oh.
There is one on Thursday evening.
This coming Thursday evening?
2 days from
And where is it again? It's at the Cloverly House?
Greenhouse.
Between, the greenhouse,
The
between
greenhouse.
5 and 7, correct, on Thursday evening? 4:30 and 7:30. Get there early. All right, anything else? Yes, ma'am?
At the end of the pier, it says, no diving. I stood here when 6 guys were diving off.
I know, we didn't have the diving police available that day.